base their models off of, you know.
Are there any movies you've watched like when you were younger and that might have been your favorite, and then like now that you're in stunts, you look back and you're like, this is terrible?
Oh, pretty much everything.
Yeah.
You know, Penitentiary. I don't know if you ever saw Penitentiary. Like,
I mean, I think I think the Star Wars movies still hold up. Like the saber work in that, like still, still holds
still
up.
valid.
yeah, that's true.
But you know, you look at like kind of like the old war movies. You know, like I was a big World War II kid. You know, had like all the model airplanes and everything. You know, like you look at stuff like Guns of Navarone and Bridge over River Kwai, like things like that.
Yeah.
Like the way that they approach doing military stuff back then, like doesn't really hold up anymore.
Yeah.
Granted, the military techniques have changed, but but just the action itself, right? Like you see a guy go and like fall over, and he has like it's like somebody just dumped like a bucket of blood on, like red paint, on it, right? Like it doesn't even look like blood, right? Like and and that's the thing, like with visual effects now. Like now we could take a knife and we could stab somebody with it because we cut the end of the knife off, and visual effects builds that, right? But they had to use like collapsible knives, or they had to like come into the guy's side, and they're doing this, and technology.
Where do you see the future of it then? How you see technology changing? I'm sure you're on sets where they're doing things differently.
Right.
Where do you see the future of it?
In practical stuff, I mean, in reality-based stuff, I don't think it changed that much. It goes back to like the kind of fantasy and sci-fi, right? Like, they're getting really good at, weightless stuff, right? And even rigging wise, like with the advent of like winch systems, like a lot you use motorized winch systems and put things on track, and now you could have multi-axis stuff and everything. So the wire work has progressed to a point where we could do weightlessness really well, and then at the same time, visual effects has progressed to the point where like, okay, well maybe we'll do like 80% of the sequence with wires weightless, because we only want to spend X amount of money visual effects wise for them to like take a head and arms and stuff off somebody and put it on a torso in the visual effects world to make it look like they're floating around. So it just kind of depends on the budget of the movie, but I mean, technology wise, I mean, you look at, it used to be a thing in stunts where it's like everybody wanted to do a high fall, right?
Right.
It used to be where if you haven't done a 50-foot high fall, then it's not a real high fall, right? You got guys doing like 50, 70, 80, 100-foot high falls, like out of buildings and office stuff, right? You don't do high falls anymore.
Right.
You put somebody on a wire, you drop them, they erase the wire. So the visual effects has increased the safety of stunts, and it's also allowed us to do a lot more things.
Talk about safety. How does that process go on set? Like if we're getting ready to shoot a stunt here, what's the process like on set when you're preparing for your scene?
It just depends on what you're doing. Like now there's foam, right, that we could buy that is in different thicknesses that you could paint to look like this tabletop, right? Or that you could throw underneath the carpet, or when I first started doing stunts, we didn't have that, right? Like if you were going to hit the concrete, you just hit the concrete.
Wow.
And so like you would say, all right, well, you're going to slam his head into the table like you did before, right? Okay, well, great. Are we going to put foam on the table? Like, oh, he's going to be close to this mic. Is this going to be a rubber mic, or are we just going to move the mic like another 6 inches away, right? Like, so part of the stunt coordinator's job is basically like risk assessment, right? Like, you go and you say, okay, well, let's take away all the obstacles that we can that are going to make sure that the performer, whether it's an actor or a stunt person, can perform this safely. We kind of try to dummy-proof the set so that like there's what's the worst case scenario? Okay, great, let's start there, and then you start backing up, and then you get down to like little minutia stuff, right?
And I'm sure you work with actors that want to do their own stunts.
Oh, all the time.
What are some actors that you worked with that just insisted on doing their own stunts?
Yeah, actors can't really insist on doing their own stunts.
Yeah.
But there's definitely actors that, I take that back. Tom Cruise could insist upon doing his own stunts, right?
Okay.
Outside of him. But yeah, I try to use doubles as much as possible. Once you meet an actor and you kind of assess their physicality, you're like, oh, well, that guy's a good athlete, or that one was a good athlete, and they could do probably 85% of their stuff, and we'll just put in doubles for like the hard hits, right?
Right.
Like if they got to get slammed on the floor or something like that. There's other actors where like they might be like, well, it's a boxing sequence and I want to do it myself, and you go over to the producer, you're like, that guy's going to hurt himself or hurt somebody else. So we got to use the double as much as possible,
Right.
Like even if we put him into training for like the next 5 weeks, he's
You
still
don't
not
wanna
going to be
risk
at the
that.
level
Right.
where I feel comfortable having him do something on set. So, and that's always touchy, right? Like, because there's ego involved,
Egos.
there's,
Ego involved.
personalities involved.
When you see a project and they just have action for the sake of action, which you can explain that, but what are some other pet peeves that you have?
Well, I mean, that's probably the biggest one, right? Like, is when you are watching something, you're like, whoa, why did that fight just happen? Or, or why did they throw that thing? Because they just decided we wanted to throw it. It was in the script and we had to throw
Does
it.
the side gun thing bother you? 'Cause
The
it
side
really
gun
bothers
thing.
me.
The side gun thing
What's
bothers
the
me.
side gun thing?
The side gun thing came out of like the whole gangster video
Oh, yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
right? And somebody thought it was really cool, so they hold a gun to the side and they shoot like that, which tends to jam the gun,
Right.
right?
And miss the target.
And miss the target. You can't aim, right? Like
Right.
it's like a fake way of shooting a gun, right? It's like if somebody shot a gun like that, you'd be like, they don't know how to shoot a gun, right?
right.
And so, and it was really hot for a little while. Like everybody would hold their gun like that. And
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, but is for me, it's like when you're watching something. If the action takes you out of the story, then you're like, what? Why is that?
Why
Right?
is it
Exactly.
You guys probably haven't seen this yet, but there's a new series called Picard. I don't know if it's on Disney or whatever, but it's like about Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek,
Oh,
like
yeah,
in his
yeah.
later years, and they have some amazing action sequences in that. But the rest of the show is just like this quiet kind of thing, and then all of a sudden you're into like John Wick type action, and you're like,
What's
what
happening?
is that, right? Like it's really cool and it's really well done. It's shot well, it's performed well, but it doesn't fit into the story at all, right? I also have like what I call my bullshit meter, like when you're watching something and as a coordinator you run into this all the time, and so I feel for people when they have to do this, but like, they'll be like, we want to have like this really amazing fight, right? This person is supposed to be like a badass ex-Marine, or like, whatever cop or whatever, and they're supposed to like have like this, be able to fight really well, and so we want to show that they can fight. And so all of a sudden you have to justify them being in a fight, right? Like, why did they lose their gun? Like if they were such like a special ops type person, they would have shot that person twice before they even got close to him. But now we
Right.
justify that the gun jams, or that like the person throws something at them, and now and they lose their gun, and now we're into a fist fight because you want to show somebody having a fist fight.
Right.
I'm
It's like a writing
I'm
issue
like,
then,
yeah,
like
I'm like,
writing.
that's bullshit. Like I don't believe that. Or like if you see somebody having a fight and it takes them 10 moves to take the person out. Well, if they're supposed to be like this stellar fighter, how come that, they could have done it in 2, right? And you see it all the time where like somebody has somebody down and somehow they get out of it, right? Or they have a knife in their hand and they do something weird, like punch them or do something, and now they're holding them with a knife where they could have just stabbed them, right?
Right.
But part of that is also like, different people do different things really well, right? Like,
Right.
and as a stunt coordinator, I'm drawn more towards reality-based stuff, right? Like, I've, not that I wouldn't take a Marvel show full on, but like I've stayed away from stuff like that because I would, rather work in something that is based in the real world.
But isn't
right?
there more flexibility if you just have a green screen? You can just literally say this character punches him out with one punch.
Yeah,
Wouldn't there be more flexibility?
Well,
or
you
just...
know, if you look at like, you know, Marvel fall, you know, because this comic book, it falls into kind of like the fantasy world, you know, where you could do whatever you want, right? And so the stuff that they do in that works well for those types of movies, right? But I'm not necessarily drawn to that, right? Like you know, part of it I think is because I came up in stunts in New York, right? And so in New York, you work on a lot of indie movies, you know. You know, I've been fortunate, you know, as a performer to work on like 3 Martin Scorsese movies, right? Like, and so when you,
Which one was your favorite out of the 3 you worked on? And why? Really quick.
Well, I worked on Bringing Out the Dead. You know, for me, that's probably my favorite experience, just because I was doubling a character, so I was able to be on set for like weeks on end, right? And just kind of absorb and like take all that in, right? But yeah, so you know, yeah, I like reality-based stuff, you know, and not that I don't like the over. I mean, it's entertaining, right?
It is entertaining.
You know, the superhero movies and things like that are entertaining, but at the same time, a lot of times you're just like, there's too much going on. I don't know what's happening right now.
I just saw a movie a couple weeks ago, and I'm gonna say the name of it.
Right.
Bulletproof 2. Only reason I watched it because, you know, it's Faison Love. You know, you don't really get to see him and stuff often, but he's actually leading.
Okay.
Faison is leading the movie?
Faison.
Okay, I gotta check it out.
I know.
No, it's
Okay,
actually
Faison.
really good. But
Okay.
so, first of all, Faison is not his svelte self.
Okay.
So even him walking across screen looks painful.
Right.
So it's hard for me to believe that you're a DEA agent when you know you're having a hard time even walking.
Right.
But the thing that really, really gnawed at me was the females in the show all had on high heels, but they were basically ninjas.
Right.
And I'm like, I mean, I'm not a woman, but I would think if I know I'm about to go fight somebody,
Drives me nuts.
I'm gonna put on some Converse maybe. I'm
Right,
putting
some
on
running
8-inch
shoes.
heels,
Right.
but they're doing like these flying kicks and these roundhouses.
I know, something really hot, right?
All right, I know we keep coming back to Marvel because that's like what's dominated,
Right.
like,
Yes.
you know, the cinema lately. You know, the fact that, you know, Zoe Saldana's character is an alien. Why is she wearing like heeled boots?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, why is Black Widow, who's supposed to be like this assassin, why does she wear heel boots?
All the aliens I see don't even
'Cause
have
it looks
regular
good.
feet.
You know,
Right.
right? No, because you know,
That's
be-
costumes like you're saying.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
but it's like they would not be wearing that. They would
Exactly.
be wearing flat-soled shoes.
Right.
You know?
Maybe combat boots.
You know?
maybe.
But working Marvel has to get you some cool points at home. Doesn't have like sons and like that's full circle moment. But
Yeah.
are they fans?
Of course, like my kids are all like fans. They're like,
Right.
"Oh my God, you got to work on Infinity War."
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I'm like,
Have you ever
"Okay,
brought him to
okay."
set?
Yeah, they've all been to set.
Okay.
You know,
I met 2 of them, I think.
yeah, 2 of them came down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Yeah, on
Okay.
Lovecraft. You know, but yeah, I mean,
Are they on by it, or they just-
I did Goosebumps because it won me points
Because
with my
of
kids.
yeah, man.
I'm
So I
sure
was
they
like,
love that.
you
Oh,
know.
That's
yes.
serious.
I'm sure they love that.
My kids don't care about any of the stuff I've worked on.
No.
I'm like, yeah, Dad's working on such and such. Okay.
Right.
The closest I got to cool points was I worked on Creed, and my son was like, "Oh, that's the fire guy."
Right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, well, speaking of Creed, so you spoke of like how like actors, you know, it's like not taking punches and stuff like that. So I was Michael B. Jordan's assistant on Creed, and in the final fight with Tony Bellew, who's actually like an actual like real life fighter,
Right.
like Mike throws this like monkey wrench and says, "Yeah, so I want to take a real punch."
Ooh.
And so,
He's
you
so
know,
brave.
of course, you know, Ryan, the director's like, I mean,
Hold on, Marissa needs to calm down. Hold on. Marissa needs a moment. All right. Okay. You can finish.
Like, we mentioned Zoe Saldana and none of the guys.
That's y'all.
the problem. So anyway,
Go on.
I actually have the video of this. He's getting ready, like, Tony's like, "Are you sure?" And he's like, And he gets ready to throw a punch, and Mike's like, like, wait a minute. And then he puts his hand down, he's like, "Okay." And he takes and it's not even like this full swing, but
Right.
you hear that, like,
Yep.
and Mike hits the ground. Everybody's like, and then finally, so that scene at the end of the movie where he hits the ground and then like, you know, Apollo Creed comes back to him or whatever, and he's like he really took that shot. He had a headache for 3 days
of course,
after
man.
that. I was like,
No, people don't understand. People don't understand what like a real punch is.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, because, you know, and even I've dealt with directors. You know, I did like this little movie. It was called Disconnect, and the director kept it was with Jason Bateman and Frank Grillo,
Okay.
and their kids have beef, and it you know, it's set up where Jason Bateman goes to confront this other teenage kid, and Frank Grillo's father, and comes out and they get into a fight like on the deck, and then it goes into the yard, and like, and the director kept
A
saying,
dad
well, you know,
fight.
well, he should just punch him. I'm like, no, we can't.
That's not how
like,
this
you don't
works.
understand. Like, and he must have brought it up like 3 different times, like not like in a row either. Like once in prep, like once on the scout, then like once like the day before we shot the scene. And the first in AD and I just kept looking at him like, you are out of your mind. Like you don't understand. Like you don't punch somebody, right? Especially
Right.
like bare knuckled, right? Like
Right.
sure, Frank Grillo's an ex-boxer, right? Guy's a stud. He punches Jason Bateman.
Yeah.
You
He's
can do
gonna
that
be out
once,
for a
and then
couple
Jason
days.
Bateman's going to the hospital. He's going to lose
Right.
Yeah.
mouth wired shut, and then you can't shoot for like half a year, and Jason Bateman's suing you. So it's like you can't. So you can't do this, right? But people understand, and that's where I, you know, going back to what I was saying before, where sometimes you work with people that don't understand the physical world, right?
Right.
Like they don't understand what it means to be knocked down, right? You know, and that's like when I work with actors, I always ask them, all right, you're a good athlete, but what's your athletic background, right? Did you ever play any team sport, right?
Right.
Because if you played any team sport, whether it's soccer, basketball, football, hockey, like any team sport, at some point you got knocked on your ass,
Right.
right? And you know what that feels like to like be going this way, and all of a sudden you're off your feet and you're hitting the ground over here,
Right.
right? And your body, because that's the environment you're working in, your body gets used to, 1, being hit, and 2, being able to protect itself when you get hit, right? Your body automatically is turning in a certain way, but if you don't have that background, then you might get hit and get cleaned off your feet, and your body doesn't automatically turn, and next thing you know, you're going face first into the ground,
Right.
And so I always ask actors, like, hey, what's your athletic background? You know, if they say gymnastics or dance or something like that, I'm like, all right, so you're a good athlete, but you've never been knocked down.
Right.
You know, yeah.
What's the most
Vanessa Bell
dangerous?
Calloway said that in the diner scene with Lawrence Fishburne, it's like the popular scene where he's like, "Eat the cake, anime, eat the
Right.
cake."
Oh yeah.
Vanessa Bell Calloway said Lawrence Fishburne actually slapped her in that scene, and she said
I believe it.
it wasn't talked about,
Right.
it wasn't prepped. But she said, as an actor, she stayed in it. But she was like, when they said cut,
She
Oh,
cussed him
she
out,
was
didn't
just
she?
literally like, I can't believe she said she just wanted to see the scene because
Right.
she was like, he slapped me and I stayed in it, you know. But she was like, it was a head ringer.
Yeah.
Like he, you know, if you remember, he brought that
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
back like
No.
bah. See, you didn't move. You supposed to bah.
Right.
Tell her to do it, Steven. Like
Now I'm anticipating.
Too soon.
Have you ever been injured on set? What's the last injury you had? That's when you like, I'm not doing this anymore.
I don't think we should talk about injury.
Nah, I mean, you know,
Have you ever been nursing injury on set?
yeah, I mean, bumps and bruises, right? Like
Right.
I got hurt worse playing sports growing up than I ever did
Okay, that's good.
doing
That's good.
stunts.
Right.
But I mean, there's, you know, unfortunately, there's injuries on set like
Yeah.
every year.
In 2017, there was John Bermaker.
John
fell.
Bermaker.
Yeah, he fell on a Walking Dead
Yeah.
from a stunt, from a rig.
Yeah.
Do you think that made anything change in the industry, or was that just kind of, you know, someone of incompetence was on set? Or
No, I mean,
what's your take on that whole? Because that really shook up the industry.
Yeah,
for a
and
little
I knew John really well, and I can't really talk about that.
Okay,
Right.
gotcha.
Copy that.
Gotcha. Okay,
So
so to
on
brighter
that
topics.
we're gonna start to wrap it up or whatever. I think we've had like a lot of your time, but we want to ask you one last question. Twofold, right? Top 5 stunt movies of yours that people should watch,
Oh, jeez.
and then, or you know, if people want to see your work, right?
Right.
Top 5, and then someone who's saying they want to be in stunts. what should they watch to kind of get an idea of,
I mean, to the second part, I mean, I think that anybody that wants to get into stunts, obviously watch as many action movies as you can, right? Especially anything that's regarded as kind of like, like the Bourne series, like
Right.
has some of the best stunts in it, like throughout those movies, and also, cinematically, like the way that those were shot, like kind of changed how people shot stunt stuff, just because they were right in. By the third movie, I felt like they were in too close, where you couldn't actually see, because they were doing really good fight stuff, but you couldn't really see it because they were in too close, right? But that whole shaky cam and being in tight and a lot of handheld and moving around, that kind of changed the way people shot stunts. But I mean, I think that, you watch anything that has action in it, if you're an aspiring stunt person, but you want to watch it with a critical eye, right? Like you want to watch it, and then, if you have it on tape, or if you're streaming it and you're able to go back, you got to think about how to break that down.
Right.
We were talking before we were rolling about, working in films, right? Like now I can't watch a movie without like going, how they do that, right? And because that's the way I learn, and that's the way I also see like what other people are doing out there. And I might have to watch a film 2 or 3 times before I could actually watch it and enjoy it, right? Because even if the first time I'm watching it and I'm in it, and then something interesting happens action-wise, I miss the next 5 minutes because I'm going, how did they do that? Or what just happened? I think he did this. Like, so yeah. That was your first one, like about.
Like
what?
if people are just curious about your work, what are the top 5? And I know it's a bad question for you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I had the opportunity to work on Selma, and that's something I'm really proud about. And and we,
Ava DuVernay.
and the violence in that I thought was really good. Then, shoot, man, I don't know.
I tell you what we'll do is we'll just give everybody, like at the end of the show, we'll give everybody Stephen Polk's telephone number and email. And you can reach out to him and ask him all the things you want. If he's hiring, where you can find him. I do know he likes expensive whiskey. So again, he won't hire me. I don't understand why. Photographers are athletic too. So if you ever have a scene where like a photographer gets blown up or something, just call me. I'm ready to fall across the desk, jump across, maybe just jump out of the way of a slow moving bicycle or something like that. But I'll be good, man. So we really appreciate you flying in, man. Like that's something, you actually flew in to let us talk to you, man. That's dope. All for a mocha. All for a mocha.
It was a very good mocha.
Yeah. All right.
So
that's going to wrap us up for Legends Behind the Lens. We want to thank Stephen Pope again. And thank
you
you
for your
all
time.
so much for joining. We'll catch you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Peace.
So
That was great. High fives all around. High fives all around.
Good job, guys. Everybody, you are watching Legends Behind the Lens. Make sure you subscribe.
why are we getting mad?
Let's do one more time.